Welcome and thanks for logging on to WYCC.org for In the Loop, the after show. Our guest today, actor and TV host James Ryan, Twyla Blackman-Larnell, assistant professor of political science at Loyola University in Chicago, and Rick Kogan, senior writer and columnist for the Chicago Tribune. Welcome, everybody, to the after show.
Thanks. A little more relaxed here, right? More freewheeling. No cocktails, but more freewheeling.
So the Illinois Gaming Board is hearing a proposal which would allow casinos, there are 10 of them in Illinois, to stay open for 24 hours, in other words, forever. Anybody got a problem with that? Twyla. I can tell you do.
Yeah, it's really interesting that we're, the arguments that they're making is that there'll be this massive amount of increased revenue that the state will be able to receive in the form of taxes that casinos pay. But if you study the articles that have been out there, some of the numbers, the 9 casinos that have been in Illinois over the last 10 years have lost, 38% of their revenue since 2007. So you're expecting to get more revenue from an industry that's declining on the one hand, right? And then the other hand is, okay, who's going to be at the casino for 24 hours? And we know that casinos largely drag in people, one, with either gambling problems, right? Or a lot of individuals from lower income or vulnerable communities and families, households, that are trying really hard to just kind of double their money or just increase their income as quickly as they can. And so we're not only are we trying to get revenue from a declining industry, but we'll be taking revenue from families that already don't have that much income anyway.
And Rick, the fear is that these people aren't going to leave, that they're going to stay there for
forever.
Days.
See, that's one of the strange arguments to me. I know gambling. I don't live in Vegas like James does, but I know gambling. And the argument against this from some people is that, oh no, these people, serious gamblers, addicted gamblers, need that break to calm down. Most of those serious gamblers will go to the nearest coffee shop. They're not going to sit there, parsing their lives and regretting that they want to gamble. They're just going to go somewhere and come back. They need to be more effective sort of Gamblers Anonymous kind of things to help these people. This is, and you're right, it's not going to raise so much more money. People go to the 7-Eleven and buy a bunch of lottery tickets.
So they're saying $5 million for the state, which is not in the scheme of things when we're talking a $100 billion pension crisis. $5 million is a drop in the bucket.
$5 million is $5 million if that's what it can actually generate. I want to move away from the whole making casinos responsible for people's personal responsibility. If these people have issues, and that's something independent of trying to create more jobs and drive more revenue for the state. It's only 2 hours that we're talking about, so I don't really understand. Especially in Vegas, like I said, everything's open 24 hours, and I don't know how they are in Illinois if they're serving alcohol during these times for free, like they do in Vegas, to keep people going. But it's personal responsibility. If these people do have these gambling problems, eventually they're going to run out of money, so they won't be able to sit there 24 hours continuing to gamble. And to your point of Gamblers Anonymous or whatever programs they have to help these people, sure, throw 10% of that revenue.
I agree.
As
I
part
don't
of
think it would be
towards
hard for
programs to help
casinos
people out
to
with
chart.
that.
It's easy to chart the gambling habits of everybody who goes in there in order to give them comps and in order to further induce them in.
Yeah.
Go up to somebody. I agree with the personal responsibility thing, but go up to somebody and go, look, you've been here for the last 72 hours. You need help. You cannot come back in our casino until you talk to this person who will try to help you.
You cannot go to the casinos in Illinois until...
Right.
I just wonder if it's a good stream of revenue, and good as in worth the cost that you're actually having on the communities and the people who are going to be using it.
On that thought, we'll switch gears. We've got some new neighbors moving in, Reverend Al Sharpton and Martin Luther King III, the son of the slain civil rights activist. They have rented a home in Austin on the west side of the city. They will live there part-time over the next few months to draw public attention to Chicago's gun violence problem. Is this a helping hand, a publicity stunt, a bit of both? Rick?
I'll say B. I will say B. You don't know exactly where they're living. You don't know exactly what they're doing here. You know that Al Sharpton's going to tape some of his TV programs here. You know he also has a new book out in the market. It reminds me of when Martin Luther King, the dad of this young man, Martin Luther King Jr. came here and moved to Marquette Park in an apartment there. He was risking his life to highlight the segregation in the city of Chicago. He got hit by, I was there, I was 15 years old, but I was there. He got hit by a brick, went down to his knees. He highlighted, in a way, the vitriol and the bigotry and the anger here. Many years later, Jane Byrne, in 1981, moved into Cabrini Green to highlight to prove that Cabrini Green was not as violent as people thought it was. Martin Luther King's was a genuine attempt in the terms of his whole mission to highlight something that was horrifying that people around this country did not know about the city of Chicago. How effective that might have been, I don't know. Jane Byrne moving into Cabrini Green, simple publicity stunt. That's where I put Al Sharpton.
I think it's a little bit of both. And I don't think that it's a bad idea that it's a publicity stunt. If it's going to bring more attention to the violence and things that are happening in the Austin neighborhood or in the Chicago neighborhood, especially because Al Sharpton does have the resources that he has in the national media. Martin Luther King III has his resources also, right? If anything, it just brings more saliency to the issue, because all you see really on the news is the effects of the violence, et cetera. We're not hearing a whole lot about what we're doing about it. And hopefully, as a publicity stunt or not, it'll just bring more attention to the issue. And there was somebody else who also did something very similar to Mayor Byrne, as well as the Martin Luther King Jr., right? It's Cory Booker in Newark, right? He moved into one of the most crime-ridden public housing complexes in the city, and he lived there for a really long time. There's a movie, Street Fight, that was about his actual first run for mayor in Newark, and it shows him living in the projects, right, and interacting with the individuals and actually having an impact with them, direct relationships with the people of the community, so that he could take that information and go on to government with it.
But these guys are going to be commuting from New York, James.
Exactly.
Yes, they're not gonna be living
They're coming in for during the week or for the weekends. If Al Sharpton wants to make a difference, instead of continuing to blame this problem on gun violence, he needs to get into the communities. We all know it's gang violence that is the problem. He needs to get into the communities, meet with these people, find out, with the police and the community working together, find out where these gangs are, why the people are not turning in, the crimes. How many times is there a mass shooting in Chicago where there's not one witness that will identify anyone? It's because they don't feel safe identifying them, because the gangs are rampant in their communities. I want to hear Al Sharpton come out of this with actually some real effective, plans to implement, as opposed to saying we need to ban guns, because they're already banned in Chicago, and we still have some of the highest gun violence.
So
in the
let's be
country.
clear, Al Sharpton doesn't need to just meet with gang leaders, right? He also needs to meet with the police and help them understand what
Well, that's why I said
community
together.
policing is, and try and help them to find ways to get into the communities as well, to have the people be more helpful.
The other thing is, I don't know how well Al Sharpton knows the city of Chicago. These problems such as this, the Chicago gang problem is not the same as the LA gang problem, or the same as the Newark
Exactly.
problem. Darian Alberts is beaten to death outside of Fenger High School. Huge news, huge news. In come Arnie Duncan and Eric Holder. Big photo op. They haven't been back. They haven't done anything.
Luckily, there's a great principal there who has done an awful lot, which is terrific.
In the
Good old Liz. Good old Liz.
When you look at Sharpton's history, a lot of it, especially recently, it's all grandstanding, it's race baiting, it's putting money into his pocket, and I'm just hoping he's not now using, the dead here in Chicago in order to just put more money in his
disagree,
pocket.
right? I think that even if you look at the civil rights movement, even a protest is a protest is a protest. This is a different form of him just kind of bringing people together, right? The hope is that him just being here along again with Martin Luther King the third, right?
Yes.
That they're going to bring more people to this conversation, and a ton of different people, whether it's community members, community leaders, church leaders, police officers, like to just bring a ton of people to the table.
He talked about celebrities as well, talking about a media movement. He said he may bring P. Diddy in as well as a guest.
I always, with my students, I always bring up the vote or die campaign, because it worked. I mean, as much as we don't really want to see celebrities participating, or we sometimes give them a hard time or wonder about their motivations for doing so,
They do
it
get our
worked.
attention. We'll
Well,
have to
but
leave.
also you've got Che Rhymefest Smith here,
Yes.
who ran for alderman, who is
Who is also a
potent
rapper, yes.
force. He may not have the venue that Al Sharpton does, but I so much more admire what he is doing in the city. It may not get the press, but those are the important people in the city. We'll see. I mean, we can always wait and see what effect this has.
We'll have to leave it there. James Ryan, Twyla Blackman-Larnell, and Rick Kogan, we thank you. Until next time, goodbye.
Have a good night.